Well, good morning again. Here we are at the end of another week, and if you're like me, you're probably really looking forward to the weekend and doing something fun. If you're like me and you're really, really tired of the masks and shutdowns and all the rest of that, head over to Coeur d'Alene. It's a different world over there, and people are having fun. So a lot of restaurants open and just things to do. If you need to get out and get away, which a lot of us do if we want to keep our sanity, that's a place to do it. But yesterday I talked about evil tidings, and particularly I was talking about how that the joy of the Lord comes to us when we are giving and not when we're always worried about receiving. But I want to talk a little bit more about the evil tidings dynamics that the psalmist spoke about in Psalm 112. And I want to tie it in with something that I just heard the other day on a TED Talk by a CI analyst and diplomat by the name of Yael Eisenstadt. And she had an interesting and provocative title to her talk. She says, How Facebook Profits from Polarization. And she goes on to explain in this, she said that lies are more engaging online than truth. And then she says, as long as social media algorithms' goals are to keep us engaged, they will feed us the poison that plays to our worst instincts and human weaknesses. It's a pretty profound statement because she basically said they use evil tidings to get our attention and to hook us in. Someone once said many years ago that if newspapers printed good news, of which there is far more than bad news out there, they would lose readers. People would stop going there, so that they have to always create sensational headlines to get us drawn in. And there are so many things that seem to occupy the media these days. I mean, we have been dealing, of course, with the COVID overresponse and overreach and overreaction for a long time. There's increasing evidence that tells us basically it was never really as bad as was advertised, and even the idea of keeping us locked down with face masks is a complete overreach, because the truth of the matter is, and despite the fact they claim that they have science on their side, there really is no science to support that face masks make a difference, or social distancing will make a difference, or that, more importantly, that COVID is as deadly. I mean, even the renowned Dr. Fauci, that was declared as being the greatest epidemiologist in the United States, which is not really true. He's just been the head of the National Institute of Health for 41 years, and which means he's basically a bureaucrat and a technocrat who's been in a position of power and influence for a long time. I have real serious questions about his ability to really help us in this season, since he keeps on changing his views. But most recently, he said that 50% of us have T cell immunity, which means that we'll never get the COVID, and another 25% of us, if you have a cold, it's the same as the coronavirus, another form of the coronavirus. And he says another percentage are probably immune. And he says then the remaining 25%, unless they're 70, 80 years of age and have some underlying health issues, that they're probably have a very small chance of actually suffering. So, they use statistics to heighten our fear by saying, look at how many, 190,000 people have died. We know that the testing and even those measurements aren't accurate and don't truly represent the real effect of the virus. And so all of this stuff kind of feeds into this frenzy of fear, where you find people get freaked out. They don't want to touch another person, which is really unhealthy, not to have emotional contact and physical contact with others. And they just go around in fear. I mean, it's like sometimes I see people in their cars with their face masks on. I think to myself, who are they going to infect? Their steering wheel? I mean, it just, anyway. But having said all that, it's not just the COVID thing. We find we got wildfires, and we got questions about the economy, and we got questions about the elections, and will they be fair or not, or will our guy win and the other guy lose, or vice versa. Climate, of course, we have all these fires. It's really hot one day, and suddenly, they're climbing climate change, and they're saying all the glaciers are melting. And I think about the glaciers are melting in Iceland. Why do you think the Vikings moved to Iceland? it was because there wasn't that much ice. And they lived there for 100 years, and it was a pretty green place. When the ice returned, they moved out because they couldn't live there. So, I mean, climate change and these kind of ups and downs of the climate are part and parcel of our world ecology. And so it's not something that we should get really excited about. And then, of course, there's the issues with China and all the civil unrest with BLM and Antifa. And on it goes. And you end up, as a Christian, being in this total, complete state of frenzy and fear. And I think what we overlook is how God promises us. In fact, he says again in Psalm 112, he is a gracious and compassionate and righteous God. It is well with the man who is gracious and lends. It is well with the man who is gracious. So our God, as he looks at us, he is gracious and he is compassionate and he's caring for us. He gives to us freely. And then it goes on to say that God in Psalm 113, God who humbles himself to behold the things that are in heaven and in the earth, he raises the poor from the dust and he lifts the needy from the ash heap, to make them sit with the princes of his people. He makes the barren woman abide in the house as a joyful mother of children. Praise the Lord. In other words, what the psalmist is saying is, yeah, there are a lot of bad things in this world, but we serve a God who is greater than those things. And even though he says God humbles himself to even look at the things that are in heaven, much less upon the earth, yet in Psalm 8, didn't he say, what is man that you are mindful of him? That God is mindful of you and me right now. He's not overlooked or forgotten us, and he's not letting things happen in our life that he isn't going to use for his glory and for our good. And so it's that idea that Satan wants to get us running scared, and one of the tools he uses is social media. Social media is designed to get us all in a tither and a dither. And not to mention social media alone, just watch the news every night. I mean, every channel at some point becomes this echo chamber of people trying to gin up the fear and the terror. And God says, peace, be still. Be still, be quiet and rest in me. Don't let the enemy and the world convince you that they're in control of the agenda. God's in control, and we need to learn how to rest in that fact. So be good. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you at church. If not, I hope you're tuning in online because it's important we don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together one way or another. God bless you. Go in his goodness and grace.